A conference convened in London by the Westminster Foundation for Democracy brought together scores of delegates from across the Middle East and North Africa. For many, one key issue was at the forefront of their minds: efforts to outlaw domestic violence against women. Their goal? The formation of a regional coalition of Arab women MPs to tackle the issue. In January 2014, that objective was achieved when the establishment of a coalition was formally declared.
The key achievements on domestic violence and the work we've been doing in this programme is the establishment of a regional coalition of women members of parliament in Arab countries to support women against domestic violence and all kinds of violence. This is one of the key achievements. It's an initiative, it's a unique, and it's the first time that women gather together around one key issue.
Comprised of politicians from 6 Arab countries, the coalition will work together with civil society organisations that share their goals. Many delegates pointed to the international nature of the coalition as a significant factor, one that will help members achieve more than individuals working alone.
It's really important to study how different societies have tackled the issue of domestic violence. We know from our long experience in the UK that law is important. It's the basis of what anybody does in terms of tackling this issue, but it's not sufficient. So it's really important to look at how you involve civil society organisations and how you try and change the culture of a society. But one of the things that we know is that there are cultural differences. And I think the real benefit for bringing together women who have similar, not necessarily exactly the same, but similar cultural backgrounds, they can learn from each other while learning also from experiences outside their culture.
Delegates also cited political developments that have emerged in the aftermath of the Arab Spring, including those reforms that have enabled greater numbers of Arab women to become MPs. Wafa Bani Mustafa says an unprecedented number of women have entered the Jordanian parliament, where they have formed their own caucus.
هو ملتقى البرلمانيات الأردنيات محاولة لاستغلال وصول 18 سيدة لأول مرة في البرلمان الأردني، محاولة لوضع إطار للعمل النسوي تحت قبة البرلمان من أجل الارتقاء بالعمل التشريعي والرقابي والدبلوماسي للمرأة الأردنية داخل القبة، وحتى نكسر ونغير الصورة النمطية التي تؤخذ عادة عن النساء المشتغلات في السياسة.
And once inside Parliament, women MPs can then bring their own experience and understanding to begin their work in promoting and protecting the rights of women.
أكيد هو بنتيجة طبيعة عملي كمحامية وتعرفي على هذه القضايا بحكم مهنتي في مرحلة مبكرة، يعني بشاهد أنه النساء يعاملن في كثير من الأحيان كقطاع مهمش ويمارس عليهن أشكال مختلفة من العنف، ليس فقط العنف الأسري ولكن العنف أيضا الاقتصادي، الحرمان من الخدمات، العنف في إطار العمل والوظيفة، والعنف حتى في عدم إتاحة الفرص لهن على قدم التساوي مع الرجال في المجتمعات اللي بيعملوا فيها.
The formation of the Jordanian Women's Caucus is a development supported by the Westminster Foundation for Democracy, but the Foundation's work in supporting women MPs to combat domestic violence forms just one component of a much broader programme the Foundation established in the Middle East.
The first component is working with women members of parliament to build a framework to support them and to give them induction programs when they are first elected to parliament, and to also use the women parliamentarians or former parliamentarians who are experienced as trainers as well, and to present their case studies and experiences. So it's a whole framework of an institutional framework of a course that supports women in parliament. The other component is related to supporting women parliamentarians inside parliament and moving forward the different legislations. We in this program had consulted with women parliamentarians, and we agreed that a very important bill for all our parliaments, that they want to receive support around it and be able to move it forward, and it's the domestic violence bills. We have also developed in this conference a common strategy between civil society organization and the women parliamentarians to be able to move forward these legislations in their national parliaments.
And as the coalition begins its work in developing that strategy, the UK experience could prove informative.
There are groups already working together in Parliament that the Foundation is supporting, and particularly I'm thinking of women's caucuses. And one of the things that is really helpful for women who are generally in a minority in any legislature is for them to be able to work together, to get together, to strategise. It's always very hard to get parliamentarians generally, who tend to be men, to see what they would call women's issues as important and to get things like that on the agenda. And certainly, using the example of the UK, we used to have for a very long time a very small proportion of women in Parliament, around 10%. And then suddenly it leapt to 20% and more than 20%. And that gave a little bit more of a critical mass. It was easier for women to get their issues on the agenda, and obviously violence against women is a big one. Before that, though, they weren't able to get their voices heard. One of the things that did make a difference while they were so small in number was working together and trying to work strategically.
And it's in supporting that strategy that Meg Munn, a former chair of the Westminster Foundation for Democracy, says the Foundation could have a particular role to play.
Westminster Foundation can do two things. It can bring together British parliamentarians who work very closely with Westminster Foundation. It can bring them to speak to women, to discuss with women from other parts of the world. And importantly, because Westminster Foundation works in countries across the Middle East and North Africa, it can bring parliamentarians and women from civil society organisations in those countries together to share their experiences. I think there's one other really important aspect. Women work well together when they have networks. They can support each other. So a country that's had some success or is struggling with a problem can look to women parliamentarians in other countries who perhaps have had exactly the same problem, or indeed have resolved that problem in maybe a way that they hadn't really thought of.
Westminster Foundation for Democracy's programme of support to women's participation in political life in the Middle East forms part of a much broader body of work. The Foundation seeks to support democracy, stability and good governance in post-conflict countries and emerging democracies. The formation of the coalition to combat domestic violence represents an important step in pursuing those goals.